Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you have really enjoyed your day of programming here with us at the Nonprofit Resource Hub conference. Today, this is our closing panel, and I'd like to welcome all of you. Our panel is From Surviving to Thriving, the post-pandemic landscape through the eyes of the nonprofit leaders. My name is Allison LaFerlita. I'm the executive director with the Nonprofit Resource Hub, and I will be moderating today's closing panel. As we're all aware, the world has changed dramatically in the early stages of COVID-19 pandemic, and the nonprofit world was definitely not immune to this shift. In a 2022 survey from the Nonprofit Finance Fund, a staggering 88% of nonprofits surveyed said they have changed the way they work, and more than half of those think the changes are here to stay. In the face of adversity, they managed to rise to the occasion. What nonprofit wouldn't? And the nonprofit industry has transformed challenges into triumphs. They came up with creative solutions that have helped them stay afloat and come out on top. I'm really excited to introduce to you our panel of executive leaders in the sector who are here to share their experience and insight with you today. Today, we have Alexandra Roque, President and Executive Director of the Ali Forney Center, Janice Wyman-Shorenstein, Chief Executive Officer of Education Through Music, and Eileen Newman, Executive Director for the Center for Bronx Nonprofits at Hostos Community College. Now, before we get started, I do want to let everybody know that we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of this panel. There is a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. That's where you can type in your questions and we will pose them to our panelists. So without further ado, I would like to give each of our panelists a moment to introduce themselves and share a brief background, about themselves. And we will start with Alex. Alex, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Alex Roque. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the president and executive director of the Ali Forney Center. I come to nonprofit work in a unique way, in a way that's changing for the future. I was actually a young person who grew up at the care of a nonprofit organization. I grew up at the intersections of poverty, of being in the foster care system, of being on the streets. Coming from an immigrant family. And I went on to be an assistant in a program, my first job at the age of 15, and have been working in nonprofits for over 25 years, working in almost every department except for finance. And the opportunity I have today is to lead programs for homeless, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender young people who are rejected by their families.
Thank you very much. Janice.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I have been in the not-for-profit sector for over 50 years. Hard to believe, but it's the case. And I have been in every type of not-for-profit, service organizations, policy organizations, a wide range, which I encourage everybody to do, and that is to really take advantage of different types of opportunities. In my last position, I was the CEO of an organization that had 300,000 members here in the United States, also had members across the world, and provided services both in the Middle East as well as here in the United States. It was a wonderful opportunity. We had a budget that was very, very large, a reserve of over $800 million. And assets of over $2 billion. So it was a large organization to manage with many, many different kinds of experiences that needed to be addressed, that needed to be channeled into the right direction for the overall good of the organization. I retired over a year ago and then was asked by the organization I currently head, Education Through Music, to take the lead of this organization, both on a local level and nationally as well. And this is a fantastic organization. It provides music education to over 20,000 students here in New York City. It is one that adjusts to the flexibilities of the changes in time that the pandemic has created. And it is something that really gives a wonderful gratification to all those who participate, whether it's the administration or teachers or our board, because we can see the outcomes of students' work on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Eileen Newman.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Eileen Newman, Executive Director of the Center for Bronx Nonprofits, and I have been in the nonprofit world my entire career. I started as a teacher. I went on to direct a teacher center. And then because I had this love of independent film, I was getting a who knows what I was going to do with it, master's in cinema studies from NYU, very useful. I went on to work in the independent film nonprofit community. So I led organizations, I worked in various pieces of other organizations. And my last job in film was at the Tribeca Film Institute, which was the nonprofit arm of Tribeca. And I was increasingly more interested in leadership. And somebody knew that and came to me and said, hey, there's this job. It's not really a job. You have to be entrepreneurial. It's this idea. And it was the idea that the then president of Hostos Community College, who now is the chancellor of CUNY, had with a funder to create an opportunity for people to have all kinds of nonprofit help in the Bronx, where there was really not very much happening. And I thought, sure, I have this job that I could have forever. Why don't I just say, sure, I'll just leave this job and go to the Bronx and do this. And that was 10 years ago. And I have to say, with all the jobs I've had and the exciting jobs I've had, this is the most meaningful and wonderful position I've ever been in. So that's me.
Well, thank you. And I think you can see from our three panelists that we have here today, there is a reason why we've invited them to share their stories with you and their insight. Clearly, the three come from very different perspectives, the different backgrounds and experiences. So with that, I thank all of you again for being with us, and we're going to jump right into it with our first question. So Eileen, I'm going to start with you. As a result of the pandemic, did your organization make any changes to the way you worked? And if so, can you name a specific change that made a big difference and tell us why?
Well, when the pandemic really hit and we had to close down, every year we have a big Women's Resilience Conference. We were 3 days away from the conference. So that stopped. And we went remote. The college didn't close because you couldn't say that. There was a whole thing about that. But essentially classes stopped, everything stopped. And we really wondered what our role could be as an organization that was doing a lot of in-person workshops, seminars. And then what started to happen is that we were getting tons and tons of emails every day about funding, about food that was available, about everything imaginable that was being done to help people at this time. And so we had always sent out information, but we just took the information and just sent it to nonprofits. And we were remote the whole time, and we would hear from people who would say, I didn't know that I could get this money. I didn't know that around the corner from where I am, people could get food. And so we became a resource for information. And then we went on from there. I didn't know like probably a lot of people, I didn't know what Zoom was. But then we started to do our work on Zoom and bring people back together as an opportunity to learn things and also to help each other. So we were, the first series of workshops we did were around how do you maintain a budget in a time of great stress. And so and then we'd do surveys, and whatever people needed, that's what we would do, but we would do it all remotely.
Thank you. Janice, same question. As a result of the pandemic, did your organization make any changes in the way that you worked? And what really did it that sticks with you that you'll carry through?
We are a service organization. We provide music education, as I've said before, to over 20,000 students. And these students are from under-resourced neighborhoods and under-resourced schools. So during the pandemic, it was very, very hard to convey the education, the instruction that we wanted to electronically. So because many of these students don't have any electronic devices at home, they don't have access to them, and they couldn't go to the school. So we provided instruments to our students so that they would not in any way be affected by the pandemic and in no way create a gap in their learning. So that was one thing that we did. And we had to really learn, our teachers really had to learn how to communicate to others over technology. That's a big, big issue, you know, not only in the learning process, but even in meetings and in webinars and in so forth. You have to really adjust the way in which you are speaking to your either audience or others in part of the meeting, so that is also something that we had to very dramatically do in terms of preparing people to be more able to communicate technologically. The third thing that is really important, and this really affected not only our students and teachers, but I think ourselves as well, and that is we had to learn more about social and emotional learning. We had to understand what it is, what people are going through during a pandemic. How do they feel in terms of isolation? How do they feel in terms of the way in which they interact with others? So we built a very, very heavy component of social and emotional learning into our instruction and into the way we do business. And we also added a trauma reaction, and that is, you know, trauma-informed learning, trauma-informed communication, because these two also are very, very much a part of the life that people are living now. I really believe that we will carry over forever our awareness, our recognition of social and emotional issues that people need to feel, need to understand in order for both learning, communication, interaction to really be more successful. And I think it really raised our entire way of doing business to a higher level.
Thank you very much. Alex, I would imagine, given the nature of your work, things really opened up for you in terms of having to change the way you provided your service. What would you say was one specific change that you made that made a difference?
You know, I think that the way we engaged and spoke to people at all levels, not just our clients, not just our staff, also our donors. And I kind of maintain this. We're learning how to work from home. We're learning how to learn from home. We have to learn how to help from home too. And we took on this concept. We took on this approach of really being close to what was at stake. And we were losing our sense of humanity. And for us to lean into conversations about what do you need? How are you feeling? What things are engaging for you? With our donor base, with our client base, with our staff base was really important. We created some unique ways for donors to have a look into the different residences. We are a homeless shelter. We cannot close our doors. We cannot work from home. You can't ask homeless young people to work from home. We are their home. And the centering of these conversations, the centering of topics around mental health, of really kind of normalizing this process and building community through the internet was really important for us. And I think fundamentally, particularly for the LGBTQ community, isolation, especially for our kids, is damaging. So we really had to work, we really focused on the mental health piece and how we were centering conversations around mental health and supports for our staff and clients and even our donors.
Thank you. So as we could, if we looked back in the past 2 years, I think we could see that during the pandemic, everybody wanted to help in some way, even if it was from home, even if it was from these virtual galas and whatnot. And our nonprofits did a really great job at rising to the occasion to meet that, and they were doing well. Now we're moving into something very different that's going on within our society, which is inflation. And now we're seeing another shift within the sector. And, you know, we were, as an industry, we were riding high for a while because we had so much support. But now with inflation, things are taking another shift. Things are taking a shift in support, in donor dollars. how are you and your organizations preparing for this? What are you doing specifically to kind of buckle down a bit, but still be able to provide the quality and quantity of service that you do? I will go to Eileen.
So we're in kind of, it's not like we get a lot of support. We have run this organization on next to nothing. And I think one of the reasons we're successful is that because we're in the Bronx, we do as much as we can without charging anyone. So I looked at what organizations will need. Obviously, they're going to need to shore up their fundraising efforts. And so here's an example of what I see going on. Tomorrow, we have the beginning of a 2-part grant writing workshop, and we're doing it remotely, and we have 267 people signed up for it. So we get good numbers for things, but nothing like that. And when I looked at the list, there are some big organizations, but then there are some smaller ones. And I think in terms of what's happening with inflation is that it's the smaller and mid-sized nonprofits that are really going to be impacted. Not that the larger ones won't, but the smaller ones could be impacted and go away. So we're doing whatever we can to give people information that can help them raise money. Or I also meet with a lot of people who want to start nonprofits. I'm really trying, and I've done this for 10 years, to redirect them into taking what they want to do and becoming a program of an existing nonprofit, so that they don't eat their heart out because they can't do the work that they want to do, and they've done all the work to get a 501c3. In terms of our own budget, it is not going to be easy. There are changes that are happening at the college that will impact on us. And so we are just, it's actually not even 2023, it's 2024 that I think is going to be the most difficult time. So, you know, I don't know how to say this without sounding like, oh yeah, we just take care of it. But I think those of us who have been in this world for a long time have been on a roll. Nonprofits are a roller coaster. And so, you know, I was running a nonprofit that was 6 blocks away from the World Trade Center on 9/11. So we sort of have something inside us that if you do this work that says, I'm going to make it work somehow. So that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I would say that most people that work in the nonprofit industry have a tremendous amount of grit. And we are always willing to adapt and adjust our sails. But, you know, it's also a business, and preparing and planning is really important, as we all know. I do want to mention before we move on to Janice to answer that question, the chat has been asking about your grant writing workshop tomorrow. So if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat the link for those to register and how they can connect with you. There's been some demand, so I will leave you to that. So Janice, in terms of your organization and what you're doing with your planning for fundraising, for, you know, strategically, and keeping inflation in mind, how are you and your organization preparing for this?
So we have looked at this from the expense side as well as the income side. First, I should say that we provide certain supplies to schools, and whether it's instruments or curriculum materials, and we provide teacher professional development. We have not compromised on those things, because otherwise will be affecting what our mission is. So instead, we have looked at our expense budget as every not-for-profit, whether during pandemic or not. We take a look at our expenses and see where our priorities are, where we can cut back, where we might be able to reintroduce funds at a different point in time. But we are constantly looking at that side of the equation. We have quarterly meetings with every department on the budget to see if there's any way that we can cut back, and that we can do so without affecting services. We also, as all nonprofits, really see ourselves as, you know, a culture of philanthropy. where we have to be very, very aware of being able to involve our donors in everything we do. And we do that even more now. When we have student concerts, we take our donors to the concerts. When we have workshops in schools, we take our donors to that. So we have really upped the process of exposing those people who might be able to support us to the work we do. So it's a kind of a balance between two ends. On the one side, taking a look at where we are, what our priorities are, and where we can postpone some of our spending, or if not, ultimately cut it, reduce it. And on the other hand, providing real opportunities for our funders to see what we're doing, accelerating that, increasing that, so that the commitment to the organization really is a real one and an ongoing one.
And I think that's a great point that you bring up in terms of engaging your supporters. It's it's always great when somebody writes a check and submits it, but to actually see their money at work and where it's going to and who it's helping, it does help keep them engaged, and hopefully will help secure that funding for the following year. Alex, what about you?
We have been planning for the impact of the inflation and also recession. We actually started a recession and inflation planning committee about 4 months ago. We meet every month. We have a host of goals on the meeting. We actually had our first kickoff meeting to think about what we needed to think about. We availed ourselves of the services available through different banks, the Nonprofit Finance Fund, a host of other industry leaders, financial industry leaders. And to Janice's point, we involved our donors even in this, right? Involving your donors, involving your community in every step of the way. We've actually reached out to our donors and we said, this is what we're planning. Here's the layout of what we're thinking of. What information might you offer us? Would you be willing to have a conversation with us? Can I take you out for coffee? You've been so sound and so thoughtful in your support financially in the future, and you have this background. Can you help us? And then we've also even included our staff in the conversations around the impact of recession and the impact of inflation, where we're having open and honest conversations. And in fact, the industry, the little bit of data that there is out there is actually speaking to your staff about concerns, and what you're doing as an organization is actually very positive for the workforce, instead of trying to be like, we're trying to figure this out behind the scenes. And then we have a number of scenario budgets that we've already drafted for next year that kind of show what changes would happen should inflation continue, what happens if a recession does kick in after Q2 of next year, which is now the new estimate or approximation. So a lot of thinking and a lot of creative engagement of our donors, our donor base, our banks, our institutions. It's that whole ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice concept that we're also asking for a lot of advice in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be an overarching theme throughout this entire day, is how important communication and education is in really every venture related to the sector. So with that also being said, one of the other important points that continuously has come up throughout the day is how important collaboration is. Whether you're collaborating with another organization, whether you're collaborating with a corporate partner, this contributes to the organization's success and sustainability. What has your organization done, or what does it plan to do with respect to collaboration over the next year? I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and we will start with Janice.
Thank you. So I think the greatest factor that we have found to be of mutual, a win-win situation, is collaboration with corporations. We have very much worked with different groups of corporations at different levels. And that collaboration has allowed for visibility. It has allowed for peer engagement. It has allowed for different kinds of exposure that we otherwise would not have, and that the corporation would not have. And so that has been one large area of collaboration that we find to be really valuable, and one that is really gratifying both to us as well as to both the leadership and the employees of corporations. So we are doing work with MasterCard, with YouTube, with AT&T, for example, just to give you a range of the kinds of organizations that feel that it's important to invest in the children of the future, in this city and probably beyond. And in turn, we have learned from our relationships with corporations. And we've also been able to expose them to what we think is important for them to know. We've also collaborated with other like-minded not-for-profits that are doing similar or adjacent work to what we're doing. And one of the things that we have discussed is being part of a national evaluation in which we would take a look at the strengths and weaknesses of all of our programs related to the field in which we are in. And that is a very, very important direction in collaboration, because it allows for comparisons to be made and best practices to be shared that are based on that evaluation that we are all involved in together. So those are two areas that really have made a big difference in terms of the partnerships that we have formed.
Thank you. And I know that you mentioned that your corporate collaborations have been really successful. Do you feel that collaborating with those other like-minded organizations has been a benefit to your organization?
I think that discussions with like-minded organizations has been very much a benefit, because we can see where our strengths and weaknesses are. We can compare notes regarding what seems to be the future direction of our field as a whole. We're not an industry, but we certainly are a service area. And so from that, we have a sense of where each organization might have its own niche, where there would be places where we could leverage our services. And it really provides a method for differentiation as well as for cooperation.
Thank you very much. Eileen, in terms of, I mean, you work with so many organizations, so you're all about collaboration.
We're all about collaboration.
But you know, you did mention something, and I'm going a little bit off of the question, because you did mention something that I think is a really important point to reiterate. When sometimes somebody has the idea to start a nonprofit, or they're working for a nonprofit that may be struggling, that could become the program of a bigger nonprofit, that is still a collaboration. Yeah. So, you know, maybe because collaboration is kind of the name of your game, maybe you could share with us how that has been successful, what you've seen, and how that helps organizations in funding too, in receiving funding.
So that is a difficult road. And so I'll give you an example of some of the people who come. I mean, the examples are, a lot of them are from 3 years ago, before the pandemic, when I was meeting with people all the time. So I would get a man who had been incarcerated for a number of years, and who would come to me and say, I want to create a nonprofit so that what happened to me doesn't happen to young men who were the age that I was when this happened. And so we would have a conversation about what they really wanted to do. And what everybody who wants to start a nonprofit wants to do is do the direct service work. They want to be Ali Forney. They want to be right in there. And a lot of times what people don't realize, and I tell them, you're going to be raising money. You're not going to be working with those young men, because you're going to have to keep the doors open so you can help them. So sometimes people understand that, and then they do go to work with nonprofits. And what I try to do in terms of collaboration is to give them people to talk to, people who I know might be receptive to either hiring them or to have them bring their good idea program into that arena. And sometimes people, I mean, I have people who have been struggling for 3 or 4 years, to like the little engine that could. They have started their nonprofits right at the beginning of the pandemic, and they're still going. I don't, you know, the thing that I really, really try to keep people away from is the conversations like, I'm running it on my Social Security check. And I've had that. And so it's, and that, you know, your heart breaks, because I understand the need, the emotional need. And so what we try to do is, and we also collaborate with organizations who deliver some of our programs. So they then will also work with some of the people in nonprofits, and we bring whatever factors we can bring in to try to keep nonprofits going, to try to help them grow, and to try to help people make the best decisions if they want to start a nonprofit, and it just seems so much like it's not going to be viable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the old adage that nonprofits are typically started out of the goodness of someone's heart, but they don't realize that it's really a business.
That's the Bronx. The
yeah.
Bronx was the nonprofits. I still have people who created nonprofits in the 70s and who said to me when I first started 10 years ago, thank God you're here, because I couldn't leave because there was no opportunities for people to get trained. So at least we've hopefully helped some of that.
Well, if they're still here and you're still here, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So thank you. Alex, how about you? How about some of your collaborative endeavors and what they have done for the organization?
You know, for us, collaboration has been key to we have collaboration in three different parts. One is as it relates to building engagement or collaborations with partners across the city, across the state, and around the country, across the country and around the world, where we're actually engaging on educating, on understanding how they're responding to this issue. So we work with homeless LGBT young people. There are a number of providers that work with homeless young people. We are collaborating with them to incorporate our clients in their base. And we're also learning from them what they do for their population or target populations and engaging and incorporating them into our programming. Simultaneously, we're also training providers. We're collaborating partners where we're offering our wealth of information to others around the globe on this issue, because there are so few organizations. We are the world's largest organization. We are this very seen as the experts in this area. So we're using our privilege, our experience, and our knowledge to inspire, engage, and commit others to this very same issue, because it will help us. And largely, there's room at the table for all of us. When another organization in our community comes to the table, you know, just last week, I have a woman who wants to open a transgender housing program for young people. That's our population. And I'm introducing her to our city, state, and federal contacts. I'm introducing her to our donors. It shows goodwill on our behalf to this person, but also to those partners, to those donors, that I'm really committed to the issue. The second part we collaborate is with our coworkers across the organization on the work that they're doing, on the interdepartment engagement, really speaking about that as an organization, because we are so big that we sometimes become siloed. So we have dedicated approaches to that. And then lastly, as I shared with our recession/inflation planning committee, we collaborate with our donors on the issues we're facing. We collaborate with the donors on opportunities to give voice and engage our community. And we do that through we have three boards. We have our Emerging Leaders Board and our Advisory Board. And those two boards are big tentacles of our collaboration with our donor base, with our community. That is incredibly powerful for us. And really come to the table offering people the opportunity to engage in ways that are important to them. So that it's donor community led collaboration on what folks are looking to get or to benefit from, and it always helps us. And it's a big part of our work.
With just to add to that question and tack onto it for you, with the collaborations that you have also done with like-minded organizations, have you found that you have received additional funding that has helped your funding, your quest for funding? Typically, we hear that when nonprofits do collaborate together, funders are much more likely to support. So I'd be curious to know if you've had an experience like that and how it went for you.
Indeed, we're actually entering into a big partnership with two other nonprofit organizations. We share the exact same donor base. One is much larger and in terms of budget than we are and has been around much longer, and one is smaller, has also been around longer. And we are engaging on this really big intergenerational community project. And on the onset, you know, it's this, who are our donors? Who's our base? Do you know this person? Do you know this person? There's kind of this guarding of information. I approached the conversation with, let's build a collective proposal where all of our logos are the same size, all of our names are clearly listed, and we kind of get over like the programming we have as people to be competitive and to be protective of information. And I'm happy to share that we had this one prospect foundation that we thought would really love this story, and it ended up being two really big foundations and one individual major donor who just loved this collaboration and spoke about how moving it was to see all of us at the table, given our history of being so divided. And it's been very successful, and it's a big project we're launching next year.
Thank you. That's a really great story to share, and I appreciate it. Janice, did you want to add to that?
I just want to say that, and I do want to share this. Collaborations are not easy to come by, and they're not easy to develop. It takes a long time. It takes overcoming suspicion, and it takes a great deal of hard work and honest conversation. So I just want to share the fact that expectations about collaborations need to be, placed in the framework of this really taking a lot of work with a great deal of trust, with trust that has to be acquired. And I just want to say that from my experience over the many years that I have been working in this field, that it doesn't come easily, but it's worth it at the end.
Mhm. And that really is an excellent point. I think that, we all want to do it. We all want to do it right, but we do know we're also very protective of our connections, of our donors, of our programs. So entering into it wisely, knowing that is incredibly helpful. So our next question is, what type of support and or resources do you believe have been most beneficial to your organization's success? Eileen.
So what, and this will relate to the second, the question after this. I want everybody to get money from Robert Sterling Clark Foundation, because they have such a unique, it's not about the money, although yes, but they have such a unique perspective on how to deal with their grantees. They fund leadership, but let me just give you an example. When you apply, they say, send us an application that you've written before. You don't have to write a new one. And maybe you got money off this proposal, or maybe you didn't, but just send it to us because we want to know what you do. At the end of the year, when you get funding from them, you don't have to give them a report. You have the chat, and you chat with the head of the foundation, who's wonderful. And after I get off this at 3 o'clock today, I have yet another professional development opportunity with them. We have retreats. We have ED every other week. EDs get together. They provide massive opportunities for help. They, as soon as the pandemic started, they emailed us and said, your grant has been extended by a year. And after that, 2 weeks later, they said, we had a board meeting, we're sending everybody $20,000. So I feel like they are doing this work with me. And so I have and it's small. Robert Sterling Clark is small, but when you have the grantees, it's a family of people helping you do the work. And so that has been, I think, and I could then extend what they were doing to other organizations who are doing leadership work because their perspective on leadership is so broad that I could introduce them to nonprofits I work with. And so I can't say enough good things about them. They should be cloned.
Well, their website's about to crash, so we know that.
I'm sure that's
everybody's
true.
writing that down. What a unicorn, really, in the
Absolutely.
world of foundations, and that's amazing. And now you have just exposed 200
Right now,
nonprofits.
exposed.
Yeah, so when they
Yeah.
get an uptick in applications this week, they can just, well,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, Eileen. Okay, so that's really great information and a great resource, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. Alex, how about you?
You know, I could not agree with Eileen more. There's so many offerings for our industry, more so than anything else that I've seen. Leadership development programs, CRE, Community Resource Exchange, your funders like Robinhood have so many. Is that where you're going later, Eileen?
See, no, I'm going. I'm going to one of the Robert Sterling Clark ED. Issues, but we use CRE delivers our executive management certificate program.
That's amazing, and they're great.
They're fabulous. I love them. That's another resource. Sorry.
It's absolutely
well,
fantastic.
could you also share that in the chat, please? I would appreciate that.
Sure. Robinhood Foundation, even the funders have that whole ask for advice piece. Even funders have investments in these areas like Robinhood. They invest in your development. DYCD, if you are city funded, there's actual funding for programs in leadership development and community building, in organizational management, in fundraising that are so vital to us. And one of the things that I've learned, and Bridgespan is another good one, but one of the things that I've learned most and that the pandemic gave me the courage to affirm for our organization is that in the nonprofit space, we spend so much time saying, I work in nonprofit, I wear many hats. And it's like, we need to abandon that. We need to stop wearing many hats. We need to focus on the one hat that we love to wear, that we wear very well, and avail ourselves of resources to help us find those other hats or those other heads to put hats on, right? Just to kill the analogy. There's so much available to us. There's a world that's rooting us on and wanting us to be successful, and it's a matter of really just drafting that one template email saying, here are the areas that I need help with, and just sending it to everyone in your universe, because these are ways to network and to put out what you're looking for. But yeah, leadership development programs, nonprofit support programs are key to our success and support for us.
I just want to add one thing to that, and that is, and I'm sure Alex, you would agree, that is not to be afraid. It's like they're not the Wizard of Oz, and you can't go up there and say, here I am, and I want to talk to you, because funders go into these jobs for a reason. And I think especially when I was in the early stages of doing this work, the idea of calling a funder or emailing a funder, I thought, oh no, they're in their sacred spaces and you can't, but they really do want to hear things, especially good things.
Yeah, we have something called Project Birthday, where we celebrate the birthdays of our kids, because if we're not celebrating for them, who's celebrating their birthdays? And we actually we teach our kids not to keep their wishes silent, right? To, like, when they make a wish, to blow out a candle, and I share that with everyone, like, share your wishes out loud, because you don't know who can help make that wish of yours come true. And that's the same way we approach all of the work in our community. We don't keep anything that we're needing quiet to ourselves. We really go out there and share and ask and tell everyone about what we're looking for.
That's amazing. I do ask that just as you're mentioning resources, please do put them in the chat. Janice, how about you?
Sure. So I'd like to continue a theme that I put forth before, and that is the role of corporations in helping. I see them as really very important resource for visibility, for cross-marketing, for peer-to-peer fundraising, for employee engagement. So let me just give you two examples. So we have a partnership with Warner Music Group, and not only have we asked for support from them, but they in turn have developed a career day for the children of, underserved communities. And this career day opens up to the people that we are serving, and really a view to the world that really can help them in the choice of what they want to do. They would never, ever have a chance to know about certain things that they might pursue if it were not for a corporation opening up its offices, its heart to these kids to learn about what different kinds of careers they might pursue in the music industry. Another example is that we have a partnership with MasterCard. MasterCard is going to have a preview of a new Netflix movie called Descendant, and it's going to occur at the Apollo Theater with around 1,500 people attending. And this is a really important outreach to the community, not only the community in Harlem, but very, very broadly. And they have, due to our relationship with them, they have given us the opportunity for our kids to do the opening song for that event. And I raise this because these kinds of sources of support not only provide money, but they provide an entry into a world for people who otherwise would never have a chance to see it, to feel it, to experience it. And therefore, I think that not only foundation support, I ran an organization just on foundation support for 10 years, but not only foundation support, which is invaluable, but corporate support is a whole dimension of opportunity, not only for funding, but for visibility, that I think is important for people to really consider.
I think that's a great point. And I do, well, while you were speaking, I do want to mention that American Express does a really great program for nonprofits that submit certain projects that they're looking for support on, and they will bring their top talent in to help nonprofits with those projects. I was looking for the link and I can't find it now, but I'll be happy to share it once I do. You do just have to scratch the surface, and you're right, Alex, you shouldn't be wearing many hats, but many of our organizations have one employee who are the secretary to the CEO. They kind of don't have that choice, but I would encourage everybody to carve out some time to look at what the corporations are doing to help nonprofit organizations. And you could always, of course, my shameless plug is check out the Nonprofit Resource Hub, because we do share grant opportunities that come up. We really try to do our best to help you with that as well. And we will start to look into those corporate opportunities as well. So now we are actually going to almost move into our Q&A, which I see we have quite a few of. But before we do that, I think a really great question to ask all of our panelists is, what was the best piece of advice you ever received in your professional career? Eileen.
That's a hard one when I think about that. I think it was, and it sort of came from, it wasn't a person who said this to me, but it was a number of people. And I think it was the advice of to say yes, even if you weren't sure. I mean, I was working at an organization that was creating small schools. I was at New Visions for Public Schools, and I could have stayed there. I could still be there. It's a big organization. And instead, I moved in to take over a nonprofit film organization that could have closed 3 weeks after I took it over. And I think it was because people had said to me, you need to do this. You need to just take a chance. And years later, I did it again. I could have stayed at Tribeca for a long time, and this job that wasn't a job was there. And I thought, I have to follow my heart. So I think it was that. It was people who encouraged me not to stay safe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Janice?
I think the best advice I received was not to have an organization do everything, but to focus and to choose, 2 to 3 priorities, get them right, get them done, give them everything you possibly can, and don't diffuse your mission or don't engage in mission creep. I have a tendency to try to solve every problem and everybody else's problem as an organization, not just as a person. And it's a hard thing to learn, that you need to narrow your scope in order to do justice to the mission of your organization. And when you do so, you often find that you may be not accomplishing as much for as many people, but certainly you are doing your job well for those that you have identified and targeted. So that was the advice I got a long time ago. I try to keep to it. It isn't easy at all, but it is certainly something that has helped me along the way.
Thank you very much. Alex?
I think my favorite or best piece has been, don't believe everything you think. Fact check, fact check, fact check. And in doing so, you can be bold, you can be creative, you can remind yourself not to give up. If you can't find the solutions you're looking for, it doesn't mean they're not there. It just means you're not done looking. And for me, that just fills my optimist heart up with a mantra, a motto that I bring into my work every day. And there's the Steve Jobs quote is the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And it's to me, those things go hand in hand. The fact checking everything I think and being bold in this work because our communities need it.
And if I may add to that, only because I was at an event last week for one of our board members who is winning an award, Ken Serini, and he said something that has always resonated with me, but reminded me last week when I heard it, and I did want to mention it here, is create your own opportunities. If you feel like it's not there or you need to get around something, create that opportunity. Because when you do that, you're opening the door to so much support. And people in nonprofit, they will take, somebody saying no to them in terms of writing them a check, and they'll move on. But they have grit and they will not stop until they are helping the people they want to help. Create those opportunities. I'm going to ask one more question before we go to Q&A, which is there a specific leader, and this is open to all of you, so we're not, whoever wants to answer, please, by all means, is there a specific leader in the industry or organization you noticed making the greatest advancements in the sector? If so, who or which organization, and what are they doing that has really impressed you? Alex?
I don't know if folks know Wes Moore from Robin Hood Foundation. He was there for a few years. He's been elected governor of, is it Illinois or DC? I forgot where it was. Not DC. Is it Maryland? Is it? Okay. So
it may be Maryland. Yeah.
Yes. He has a book out called The Other Wes Moore, and he tells the story, the parallel of his life and what could have been his life and someone who has the same exact name and how that person ended up in jail and through the cracks of the systemic failures. And the one thing that stood out to me about Wes is that his connection to everyone in the room was so genuine and thoughtful and powerful. And it's a leader that I refer back to often when I walk into rooms with our staff, with donors, with our clients, that there was intent in conversations with him and that I was the only person he was speaking to when he was speaking to me. And similarly, he led the work with that same focus and that guide to be intentional in his work and thoughtful in his work. And I just thought he was an incredible leader and someone who I just really admire and enjoyed watching his time at Robin Hood before that and even where he's going now. So yes, Governor-elect of Maryland. Never ran for public office before. Very special person. Indeed. Agreed.
Janice or Eileen, did you want to add to that?
Sure. I have another person that I would identify who probably very few people know. I think with hatred rising so much in this country now, and we are facing such a dramatic increase of divisiveness. Somebody that I really respect is a man by the name of Jonathan Greenblatt. He's the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, and he has done remarkable work in working with the government, in working with many not-for-profit groups, in bridging the divide between very many different ethnicities, races, religions, to see ways in which hate can be reduced, in which hate can be overcome, in which differences can be diminished. And I think this is a man that I really feel is a role model to a lot of people in this country.
Thank you. Eileen?
So I'm having a hard time. I mean, Westmore is incredible. I'm having a hard time focusing on one, because I feel like there are just so many people out there doing. I mean, I look at somebody like Phil Lee, who is trying to transform how funding is done and what philanthropy means. But I also look at somebody like Stacey Abrams. You know, why the hell doesn't she win? I don't get it. But I do get it. But somebody who's just not backing off, somebody who's continuing. And I think that you have those names that you know, and then you have people who are doing incredible work in a nonprofit in the Bronx, you know, whose name a lot of people aren't going to know, but every day goes to work and is an incredible hero or heroine. And I think, and for me also, they may not be changing what the sector is, but every year we do a women's resilience conference, and we bring in 15 women. We have a keynote, but then we bring in 15 women to talk about who they are, what they do, and why they do it. And the point of it is that these are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And so I would say them, all of those people, you know, the people who are managing to run. The woman who's taking care, who I met, who on a Zoom call, who's taking care of her grandchildren, was taking care of her grandchildren during the pandemic because the parents were both gone. And she's also the one giving food out in her development because nobody else was doing anything with food. Those are the people.
No,
and the
that's
Westmores.
yeah, well, and that's true too. And I think that, you know, today we have 177 people at this conference who are doing it every day and doing it to some capacity or another. I do want to open up the room for questions. We have a couple of minutes. So let me just see if I can see any in our Q&A. If you want to put that in the bottom of our screen for questions in the chat. Let's see. We have somebody who said thank you. You know, I should also give all of you an opportunity too. I don't see anything in the Q&A right now, but if you had anything to ask each other, is there anything you would like to ask of each other?
Alex, how big is Ali Forney? That's my question.
We are $20 million now, 300 employees, 18 sites. And then we have a separate program or entity that's 44 partner agencies across the US and then operating in 10 different countries. And that's a rapid growth for us.
Thank you. We do have one question. I do, just because I want to make sure we do address the audience questions as well. Somebody writes in, earlier today, we heard about fostering relationships with donors. How do you do this? And what are some of the techniques that others should use? And I'll open that up to anybody who wants to answer that.
It's a long road. It's a long road. And
well, if you had one thing that you thought was really important when you're fostering those relationships.
I don't have one thing, because I think that relationships are things that get built. And so it's building a relationship. And what is the one thing that builds a relationship? I think there are a lot of things. And I think that you have donors who really get it and get what you're doing. And so you can develop something that is both a personal, professional relationship, because you can pitch something to them when it's just half of an idea. And but it's that, it's for me, it's, you have to do whatever you can to have the sense, and a lot of that's personal, to have the sense that this is somebody who is going to be in some ways a partner in what you're doing, because they will care that much.
I think
Okay,
in
we
a
just,
very-
I'm sorry, Janice, just to let you know, we only have another minute or two.
I think a very important thing about cultivating donors is knowing their interests, their passions, their their backgrounds. You have to do a real deep dive so that when you approach them, they can relate to you and you can relate to them. And it takes patience, it takes perseverance, and it really takes persistence.
Thank you. Alex?
For me, I approach my donor relationships as I'm giving this person the opportunity to become a better person, to have an impact, and to do good in the world. I don't approach it as someone I'm trying to ask for money. I'm genuinely committed to the improvement of the people at the table, our client, our staff, and the donor involved. And that lends itself to a different relationship that has been very powerful for me. I hardly ever ask for money. I ask for opportunity to make a difference. And there's a shift there because money is so charged, and we're also scared of fundraising.
Thank you. So with that said, what a great way to end our program today. Thank you so much, Eileen, Janice, and Alex. You really provided everybody with great insight and inspiration and resources, always so important. With that said, also, I do want to say, if anybody here wants to connect with our panelists, please shoot us an email and we will make sure that we make the introduction. We are having a 30-minute networking session after this that starts at 1:30. So, if our panelists can stick around for a little bit to say hello to those people, please do. I am, once again, Allison LaFerlita. I'm the Executive Director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. If you are a nonprofit organization that is not yet a nonprofit partner with us, please sign up. It is free to you. We offer not only great resources like this amazing conference, but we do many things throughout the year, smaller virtual meetings, in-person meetings. We are here to help you. And that's what we want to do. I want to thank all of our associate members that participated today, that came and helped and bring everybody together, that helped spread the word. And of course, our keynote speaker, Arva Rice, all of our panelists that came, all of our moderators. This was such a great start to something new for us as a nonprofit resource hub. We will be sending all of you a survey to get your feedback on today. And if you want to connect with everybody, this is what it's about too. See who came today, connect with them, ask us to introduce you. We're really good at doing that. So take advantage of that opportunity. And once again, we're going to be moving into the networking portion. We will close out this portion of the conference. You'll go back into the lobby and then head under sessions into the networking room. Please join Nonprofit Resource Hub. If you had a nonprofit colleague that was not here today and you think that they should be knowing about what we're doing, please spread the word. You will all have access to a recording of today's conference, so you can rewatch it, you can share it, and we will be doing this again. So this is not the last of us that you'll be seeing. And so much thanks to everybody that contributed today. It was a giant undertaking for a really wonderful, successful day with amazing, amazing speakers. So thank you so much. I can't believe I'm saying this, but happy Thanksgiving, everybody, because it's almost here. And I do look forward to seeing all of you soon and hopefully next time in person. Thank you very much. And we'll be heading over to the networking room now.